here?
He didn't confirm that.
We need
I don't
him.
know if he is. Did he send something in writing, Jasmine?
He did not.
We can't do it then.
Well, let me try to get a hold of him. You can start.
Is it 6:30?
It is 6:32.
Are we ready?
We are.
Okay, it is 6:32 and the Bridgewater Planning Board is in session. My name is Ray Ajemian. I'm Vice Chair of the board. Patrick Disco is the chair, but he is in his car on the phone, but not on the video part. The other members, Mrs. Jean Garino, Michael McDonald, Stephen Geller, and Astrid Rojas is the associate member that's present. Ms. Burke and Jasmine Faraci is also present at this meeting. Because of COVID, the governor has instructions for Zoom meetings for various boards, and I'm going to read that into the record right now. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Laws 30A, paragraph 18, and the governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Bridgewater Planning Board will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time. This meeting is being recorded, and within 48 hours, we will post a link of the recording on the town's website and /or other town social media page. During this meeting, all votes of the board will be taken as roll call votes. The following Bridgewater town staff will also be participating remotely, and I've already given the names. I believe I did not mention Mrs. Leslie Dorr, the office administrator, and Mr. Azu Antonaro, town engineer, should be on the call shortly. At this time, everyone's mic is muted. The board's mics will be unmuted through the whole meeting, and as items appear on the agenda, the project representatives' mics will be unmuted. The project is a public hearing and allows for public comment. We will ask that you use the chat feature to ask your question by listing your name and address and your question. The chair will recognize all questions in order. You can also use the raise my hand feature in the participant menu, and you'll be unmuted when the chair recognizes you. Again, please state your name and address before asking a question. If you're on the phone, you can dial *9 to raise your hand. That is the governor's order, and can we have the agenda up?
Yep, it's coming up right now.
So, Mr. Ajemian, if Mr. Antonaro is not on yet, do you want to take the other two items, the tree board and the minutes, out of order?
Yes, but Mr. Antonaro is not here yet, so we will take those out of order. I believe the second item is the tree board. And I just want to give you two things about the tree board. One, I just want to give you a quick update, and the update is simply that we do not have it in functioning yet. This has been in progress for over a year. The town manager informed me a few weeks ago that it would be up and running by the end of March. It has not been, and so I intend to continue to try to make sure the board is operating, especially with the spring here, and that we do have some money in the budget from the Fox building that can be spent on plantings. Are there any comments from the board on this? Any questions or anything regarding this? I just wanted to give you a quick update as to where the status of the tree board is right now. That said,
you're looking for us to appoint somebody from the board, and you'd like to be that appointee, correct?
Right. I was just going to mention that if the board is willing, I think the proposed language for the tree board does have a liaison member from the planning board, and if the board is willing, I'd be happy to be that member. If somebody else would prefer to be that member, then by all means, I'm fine with that also. So if what I will take now is a motion to appoint somebody to the tree board once it goes into existence.
So, Mr. Ajemian, I'll make a motion to appoint you to the tree board once it's set up, but to also have you to as the planning board representative, continue to work with the town manager to get it set up, and then serve as the member that represents the planning board.
Okay, is there a second to the motion made by Mr. Driscoll?
I'll make a
Second
second.
that.
Motion is made and seconded by Mrs. Garino. Any discussion on the motion? Take a vote. Mrs. Garino,
Yes,
Mr. Geller,
Yes,
Mr. McDonald,
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll,
Yes,
and I'm a yes, so that passes. The second thing on the agenda is the minutes of March 17th, 2021. I'll take a motion to approve the minutes if they've been read.
yes, I read them. And I did email Les a copy with some Scribner's corrections this afternoon.
Okay, is there a motion to accept the minutes with the corrections that you have made?
Yes,
Is there a second to the motion?
second,
Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, take a roll call vote. Mr. Geller,
yes,
Mr. Driscoll,
yes,
Mrs. Garino,
yes,
Mr. McDonald,
Yes.
and I'm a yes.
thank you.
Okay, is there director's report?
There's not, but I can tell you that I just heard from Mr. Antonero. He's driving. He said give him about 7 minutes and he can join your meeting.
Okay.
so should we, is there a public notice to be read in, Ms. Breck, that somebody has a copy of?
Yes, there is. Give me
Uh,
just a moment. I'll
There
pull it up.
should be.
Do we have a public notice?
We do, yes.
Read it.
I'm trying to pull it up. All right. On Wednesday, April 21st, 2021 at 6:30 PM on the Bridgewater Planning Board will conduct a public hearing via Zoom on the application by Oldfield Estates LLC, Robert Long, for a major modification of the approved subdivision known as Oldfield 2. The modifications include the construction of a swale behind lots 48 through 51, the construction of an infiltrating catch basin behind the mail kiosk, the construction of a drainage pipe which outlets behind the stormwater basin, and addition of 11 gravel parking spaces to access the open space trails. All interested persons are encouraged to attend Bridgewater Planning Board, to be published 4/7 and 4/14.
Okay, thank you.
It is a public hearing. You may, the town engineer is aware of what the project is, but some of the abutters may not be. So you may want to have the applicant present a presentation so that the abutters are aware of what the changes are. And that way, when the town engineer comes on, he can answer any questions.
Yes, very good.
Evan, would you like to share?
Please, Jasmine. For the record, my name is Evan Watson. Tonight I'm representing, with Prime Engineer, representing the applicants. I'm going to share my screen. So, as you mentioned before, we did come before the board a month ago, but the abutters weren't notified, so we weren't able to hold a public hearing. So since then, because it's a major modification of the special permit, we did need to notify the abutters. So there were quite a few because the property is quite large. So I'll definitely present all that information right now. So this is for the Oldfield Estates in Bridgewater. It's off of Cherry Street and continues through Urbeck Circle. This is a Google Earth view. So we did have to notify people all the way on Cherry Street and Walnut Street, Urbeck Circle, and a few others out in the Bridgewater Preserve. Essentially, what's the reason why we're asking for a modification is when we were under construction of these homes here, we noticed there was quite a bit of water coming out of the woods and flowing through the property. And there wasn't any drainage designed to accommodate the flow that was coming. Normally, we would just take care of that by rerouting any storm water around the houses. However, we realized that there was a significant area adjacent to Cherry Street that wasn't necessarily accounted for in the original design. So we wanted to make sure that these houses weren't going to have any trouble, and that the drainage system that was already designed and approved wasn't exceeded by the additional stormwater. So let me bring up the, so this is the drainage analysis plan. So I did drainage calculations. This drawing shows the area that was unknown at the time. There wasn't topography on the plan, but we've since got some, and we see that this relatively large area here flows onto the project site. So this water was coming down and would enter the stormwater system where it was not accounted for. So what we planned on doing, this is the design plan that we submitted. When we submitted it last time, there was a small error on the plan. So we've fixed the plan. We had a meeting with Azu. So to go over this plan, this is the back of lots 48 through 51. The houses are down here, and there's a pretty steep slope up to the top. So the water was coming down off this slope. So we added a swale, which is a fancy word for a ditch, at the top of this slope. And we direct the water around here through the swale into a small flat area behind the mailbox. This community does have a community mailbox, so not everybody has a mail. So it's a turn off where there's a mail group gang mailbox. And the calculations show that at almost all times, the water goes into this flat area, infiltrates into the ground, or goes into the leaching catch basin here. But if we did get as an engineer, we call it a design storm. So if we get something that you'd consider like a hurricane, or a massive spring or winter storm that would exceed that capability, this drainage structure has an overflow pipe, and that goes along lot 11 in easement and then bypasses the detention basin. So by doing that, we don't affect any of the approved piping that's already been constructed. So that was the issue. We couldn't increase the size of that because it's already there. And same thing with the detention pond. We didn't have to do anything with that other than to run the pipe through there. So the design essentially just takes the stormwater that would have normally flowed across this site to the wetland, and we bypass it. The drainage calculations show that we've further decreased both the rate and the volume of runoff as it goes through here. So we meet all the stormwater standards as approved. And as I mentioned, we met Azu out there a few weeks ago. We took a walk along the swale. Some of it was already constructed because it was done kind of as a stopgap measure during when they had the houses up. It was a surprise, so we had to put something in right away. So he took a look at that, and he can speak for himself, but it was my understanding that he was happy with the size of this swale. It wasn't a danger. Nobody would fall in, wouldn't require a lot of maintenance. And that the grate that's here is similar to the same type of grate that's in the road. It's a cast iron grate that I can't lift it. I'll say that. And I know a small child wouldn't be able to lift it either. You'd, maybe somebody who does CrossFit every day could pick that up, but not me. So that's there along the walking trail. The other features that we added into this modification beyond the drainage, we thought this would be a good opportunity to show the new design for the mailbox. And the original permit asked for 11 gravel parking spaces so that members of the public could access the open space. Actually, back to Google Earth, all this area up here is all dedicated open space as part of the open space design process. And this is owned by the town of Bridgewater. I think there's, I forget the name of the park, but there's a park here.
Jenny
Jenny
Leonard
Lynn.
Park, I believe.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So that would provide access across from the park or whatnot, or if you want to drive your dog down here and take him for a walk, that's a nice little spot. So, and just because that was different than what was on the approved plans, we included that in the modification. And that wraps it up.
Okay. Is Mr. Antonaro on yet?
He just sent me, he needs the meeting invite. I'm sending it to him right now.
Okay.
This is Lee Castagnetti.
Oh, hi, Lee.
Hi, how are you?
Oh, how are you?
I just wanted to speak on the reconfiguration of that parcel briefly.
Oh, let's wait. Let's do the swale first.
Okay,
I'd like to get that out of the way.
sure.
Still not on yet, eh?
Lee, by the
I
way,
just-
is with Long Built Homes.
Right.
Frank, I just have a question just while we're waiting.
Sure.
So Evan, at the last meeting, one of the concerns of that infiltration structure underneath that small basin next to the walkway was the depth of it. And the cover, so has that changed since the last meeting? Is that still a very deep structure, or has that been changed?
So
or has that not changed?
That's a good question. The concern was, and if we look at the grading here, you see it's 61 and it goes to 59 and a half. So it's 18 inches deep across this large area. You probably wouldn't even notice that it's a depression. When I annotated this inlet rim, I called it 56 instead of 59. So it appeared that this was a 5 foot deep pit here with a drainage structure at the bottom of it. So that would be precarious if you fell into that pit and then there's an additional structure at the bottom, would be trouble. But this pit, this leaching chamber is no different than the manholes that are in the street, and it's in a flat area. So I think once we discussed that this was not a cavernous kind of hole in the ground, that those concerns went away.
Okay,
I
could
believe
we?
Mr. Antonaro is on
So
now.
that was
Oh, wait, but let's make, Mr. Antonaro, are you on?
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman. Yes, so I did meet with Mr. Watson and
Mr. Antonaro, what I'd like to do,
Castagnetti.
Mr. Antonaro, just 1 second. What I'd like to do, maybe for my own edification, is to walk through this part by part and see whether there are questions from the board that you can help them with in terms of whether, instead of taking it as a whole project, I'd like to look at it by part, starting with the drainage swale at the top. That was brought up, that swale was put in, it's been put in already. Do you have any issues with that swale, or what should be done differently, or what?
I looked at it, it's functioning as they designed it. However, my recommendation was and still is that any acceptance of a public roadway, which normally includes the drainage system, that specifically the modification language includes a determination by this board that swale will not be part of any street acceptance and drainage system by the town of Bridgewater.
And who will take care of the swale?
And the homeowners association that they have will take care of the swale. That will not be the responsibility of the planning board or the town.
Can you determine how deep the swale will be?
It's really shallow.
Okay, shallow meaning a few inches?
Shallow means less than a foot and a half.
So we could have a foot and a half of water in that swale at certain times, correct?
Theoretically, yes, but no.
Okay. All right. Further down, then we go down to the basin there. Mr. Driscoll had a good question on that. Are there any other questions from the board on that? And, excuse me, at first, Mr. Antonero, do you want to comment on that?
Yes, so they corrected the elevations because that was my main concern, that you have a basin 4.5 feet deep, open to the public. And to which I definitely was not in favor of, but then they clarified the elevations. And so again, this will be, so if you would look to assume for a moment that basin is to the west and then the road is to the east. You will note then that the street drainage goes to a set of drainage basins on the east side of the easterly lots. So when we do street acceptance, that will all be part of what we accept. I will not recommend this basin here being part of our street acceptance because its primary function is not street drainage. So I will not, so basically when we accept the street drainage, if you notice, they ran that line separate into the, so that it's not contributed runoff to the street drain. So again, I will recommend approval of the modification, but I will not recommend the town being responsible for the maintenance of that basin.
It'll be part of the homeowners association then, correct?
That would be my position.
Okay, are there any questions from the board on this particular point?
Just, so Mr. Antonero, if that basin is going to be on land adjacent to the Jenny Leonard Park that I think the town has first right of refusal on, if they want to add it to the park, how would that work if the basin is on land that may go to the town, but there's a structure on it that's going to be maintained by the homeowners association? Would they just have to create an easement or something that they would maintain that basin even though it's potentially on town-owned land?
That will be a part of the area that I will not recommend the town making part of the public space. You might give the town easement for public usage of that, but I definitely will not recommend making that part of land that the town would take potentially. No.
So we'd have to just add that to the mailbox lot or something like that.
That's correct.
Any other board members?
Yes, please. How long does a homeowners association, does it stay in effect into perpetuity or?
It is in perpetuity.
Okay.
Any other board members on this particular point? All right, let's take the water across the street now. And Mr. Antonero, could you explain where it's going and how it's going to be moved?
Okay, so what they are doing is they are taking that water and then they're running across the street, and then it goes as an overflow just on those rare occasions where you might have an overflow, which I very much doubt that you're gonna have, but it will be an ill-advised design approach to not provide an overflow. So that essentially is what that pipe will be doing. It's an overflow pipe for those extreme, like 500-year storm event going over there, because the swale and the recharge pit that they have under that basin that I'm not recommending to be accepted, that is more than adequate to handle their drainage. But again, you have to have an emergency overflow. That
So
goes runs parallel and across the street, and then discharges behind those lots. I can't see the lot numbers right there, that lot and the other lot. Yeah, so that easement goes through those two.
And it's being piped under the street,
Yes,
under the ground, and then discharged where?
yeah, where the cursor is going.
Right, but what is that? Where is it going exactly?
It goes,
It's
you see that it goes out to the wetlands out back there.
Okay, all right. I just want to hear that, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, so it's going into the wetlands and the pipe takes it all the way into the wetlands, correct?
that
No.
would be the case. Now it dumps between the drainage basins there.
Okay,
Yeah, and then out to the wetlands.
okay. Questions? from the
Mr.
board?
Chairman, if I may, Mr. Chairman, to clarify that we did not expand the limit of work. This outfall is within the slope of the drainage basin. And the water that comes through there is all, the water doesn't have any pollution in it. You know, it's just water that comes in off the woods. It didn't come off of impervious area. So that's why you don't see it being treated or anything like that. It's really a stormwater bypass. So we're taking the water and moving it around our site before we take it into the site. So
Okay. Just what kind of maintenance would you feel has to be done on this whole project in terms of making it operate functioning properly over the next 25, 30 years?
It will primarily vegetation management on the other side of vegetation management of the swale. If the swale is not maintained, then the water will just overflow and go into the yard in the backs of those houses.
Right.
So they have to maintain that swale.
So the main maintenance will be the swale itself. That's what you're saying, right?
That's correct. And making sure that it's free of foliage. All the
So-
trees that shed, yes, we have to be free of foliage. Otherwise, if you get foliage deposits over the years, that foliage decomposes, becomes loam, and before you know it, that loam seals up the swale, and then it becomes basically an overgrowth that goes straight across. So they have to maintain that swale and keep it functioning as a swale.
Just one other question out of curiosity. What went wrong that you didn't anticipate this water in the first place?
I don't think something went wrong as much as I believe they realized that a lot of the water actually going through those the back of those houses. So that's basically what they're trying to avoid. So I don't think I would say anything went wrong.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? Mr. Antonaro or to Mr. Watson? All
none
right,
for me.
I'll open it up to the public. If I believe procedure is if you have a question to raise your hand in the chat. And
Okay. Have a Ryan who I'll unmute now if he wants to speak. You just need your name and address for the record.
It's Ryan Grant at 400 Walnut Street. And the question is, the swale and the basin were being built because you have a slope behind the 4 houses shown and it comes down. So why would Cherry and Walnut Street be included in the certified letters we received if we're at a higher elevation? And then secondly is, if it's the homeowners association to do the maintenance and the maintenance isn't, what an animal dies in the thing or people throw things in it, that's different than rainwater or runoff water. And then that goes into the wetlands and it's on the homeowners association. That's all.
Answer your question about the abutter notifications. They're required once they do any kind of modification to notify all abutters within 300 feet of their property lines. It doesn't matter if they're higher ground level or lower. It's just 300 feet within the property lines. Everybody gets notified. That's the state law.
I'm not within 300 feet.
You must be within 300 feet of the property lines of the subdivision somewhere.
Yes,
If you
so
were notified.
the property line includes, it's the property line of the overall subdivision, which is,
Correct.
has the special permit on it. And that includes a relatively large open space parcel in the woods here. So I believe your house is somewhere in this area. So that's why you abut the open space parcel, which actually, if you'd like, I can answer the other question. Again, if this project was not here, and we didn't have a swale, and if there was any kind of, trouble like you're indicating, that water was coming from this spot and it was flowing directly into that wetland as well. So it's, the goal here is, again, not to take this water into our project, but to just reroute it around the way it was before we had this development. So.
Right.
We have an Ariel who has her hand raised. I'll unmute you.
Hi, Ariel Gata. I'm on 14 Quail Run off of Oldfield Road. I just have and are we able to ask and comment on any part of this project at this point?
No, just what's being
Okay.
proposed tonight.
Oh, well, yes, I didn't know if I know you were going piece by piece. I just want to make sure, I had a comment about the parking spaces.
What we're dealing with right now is this drainage.
Okay, all right, then I'll question that. I thought when you opened it up to the public, it was for everything.
Well, but the parking spaces were already on the plan. They're not being proposed to be, I don't believe they're part of the modification.
What are you gonna say?
Okay.
Excuse me?
Evan, am I wrong about that? Or are the parking spaces part?
They were on the plan, but they were the drive it came in like this and went all the way across and back out. So we've shrunk that down a little bit to reduce our overall impact of this area. And then the parking spaces were on both sides of the mailbox access. So if you parked your car there, you also had residents of the community coming through there. So we separated the two so that mailbox access is just for mailbox and open space parking spaces are just for the open space. That's the only difference, but it's still the same number of parking spaces.
Okay, all right, I guess it's too late then, because I was unaware there were parking spaces, and I just have a concern with bringing in additional traffic to the neighborhood, because there's a ton of young kids who ride their bikes and run around, and that scares me. I have a 2.5-year-old, and there's also tons of kids on their bikes and more traffic coming up and down those roads, and people are flying up and down the roads, and there's really nothing being done that's even suggested to people to slow down.
I envision those parking spaces would be used by the residents of Oakfield and not by somebody coming from across town to drive in here and do something.
Watson, just clarify, how many parking spaces are there now and how many were there? You're saying the same number?
It's the same number as was approved. So there's nothing new to the approval. There was 11 approved and there's 11 here.
And the purpose of the parking, I think she's interested in what the purpose of the parking spaces were in the first place.
It was to provide people to access this open space.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman, could I ask a question?
Sure, go ahead.
So Evan, if I think, just going back into history a little bit, the board asked Attorney Castanetti to separate the mailboxes from the parking spaces, and just for the very reasons that Evan, said, that we wanted if somebody did want to come in from Cherry Street or Walnut Street Park to use the Jenny Leonard Park, they could use those spaces. So that's why it was separated. But I believe there were 11 spaces on the original plan. But I believe they were moved in terms of location, on that site. Correct, Evan?
Yep,
I don't have it.
that's exactly correct. It's not anything different that we're asking for. It's just separating things out.
And just so we're not misleading anybody, it's if somebody from Cherry Street or Walnut Street or the other Bridgewater Preserve wanted to drive their car down there and park there, they, assuming the town takes ownership of it, would have the right to do so to access the Jenny Leonard Park, because the elevation on the other side of the street is not conducive to parking. I think there's probably a 6-foot elevation change between the road and the Jenny Leonard Park, so there's no parking. And I think that's why we asked Attorney Castanetti to separate that, and he did that for us, and he's providing those 11 gravel parking spaces as requested in the special permit.
Yep, correct.
Any other
We
questions?
have a J Needle. Can I unmute you?
Needle?
Jake Needle, 76 Urbex Circle Extension, Lot 40. I have a couple of questions. First, with the outfall, is there enough elevation to accommodate large amount of water, a flood event, that it won't back up in the pipe and just flood the inlet?
Yes, so in normal cases, it would infiltrate through here. I did a comprehensive drainage report here, and we have all sorts of calculations through here that show that that pipe, if you look here, it's not a 6-inch pipe. We put in an 18-inch pipe because again, when in normal times in sandy soil, there's not a lot of water that's going to come off, and any water will infiltrate. But in the case with the winter time, the ground's frozen, and we get a big nor'easter, we'll have plenty of water. So that's why it's an 18-inch pipe and not just a little 4-inch overflow pipe. It's a serious pipe.
Yeah, I just know there's a lot of water on the opposite side, or where the wetlands are. I mean, there's standing water there now, so I can only imagine with a big rain event, how quickly that will fill and, back up that pipe.
Yep, so the pipe is a little bit higher. And then what happened, we're talking about this area right here. We're at about elevation 40, and then everything continues on into the Taunton River here, so.
Okay. I also have a question about the parking. Obviously, I'm a direct abutter to that parking. It was never originally on the long-built plans when we purchased the house. We had no idea about public parking. We would rather not have public people staring at us right through our backyard. And also, it looks, according to this plan, you're going to have to take down a number of trees, which we purchased this particular lot because of the existing trees. And they were promised that those trees will be untouched and they're going to continue to be there.
I don't have the plan at my fingertips here to put that up.
Why not?
And those, I could probably find them, but I know they were at the, if you give me a moment, I could find them. It's this area in here. So I can find the plan. I could show you that there was parking spaces through there. Our mailbox area was moved over a little bit, and we're taking on that area. So if you give me a few minutes, I can bring up that plan.
I understand what you're saying, but the plans that we were presented when being sold these houses had nothing besides the mailbox center there. It was supposed to, they told us it'd be similar to the old field preserve where there's just green area around the mailboxes. They didn't say anything about public parking or public access. I also have concerns about increased traffic, as previous person mentioned, because just in our roundabout, we have probably, 25 kids I see on a daily basis out in the street.
Next, we have a Brian. I can unmute you.
How you doing? I had a couple of quick questions. One was, what's
We need your name and address for the record, sir.
Brian Killay, 352 Walnut.
Thank you.
What is the what's the plan to keep the water that's coming down the street from running off and into this well?
It's just the elevation. So this swale is at about elevation 75 and the roadway is at about elevation 60. The road has curbing on both sides, so the water will flow down the road and into the catch basins.
Weren't you just talking about 57? And yeah, you said there was about 1.5 feet. What were those numbers you said before? About
Yep,
1.5
so-
feet different.
Right, so adjacent to that, we're at about 59. It is lower than the road, but again, there's curbing on this road that keeps the water in the road, and all this drainage that's in the road was designed to accommodate that stormwater. So that's
Right,
not going to
and
come
one
off
of
the
these
road
ev-
and come into here.
In one of these events that you're building this whole thing for, isn't that, I mean, what do you got, like a 3-inch curb, a little berm on the edge of the road?
Yep, and so it all flows down here to this low spot, and then
Do you,
if
do you have a plane up? Like, because I can't see it. You're pointing and talking about something, but I don't see it.
can people see my screen can other people see
Yes.
my
Oh, there we
screen?
go. Sorry, I had to swipe over a couple of spots. There it is.
Okay,
Sorry.
no problem. Sure. So the curbing in the road brings the water to this low spot that's adjacent to this detention basin. So the
Okay.
water is not going to pond as if the road is sloped. So it'll all come down here. And if we do have an event that exceeds the capacity of the grates, it'll flood this area and overtop and go into the basin.
So that's all water running off the street. Is that considered clean water?
No, it's not. So that's why there's what's called a stormwater BMP here. So this gets all cleaned up in here.
And how big is the structure that's going underneath this grate in this well?
I think it's a 6-foot diameter structure, about 6 feet deep. It's a 1,000-gallon dry well. From the top, all you're gonna see is the grate and the crushed stone that's around it.
Okay. All right. I just gotta say, I agree with the guy that's living right next to that. I'd be pretty bummed if, public parking was constructed next to my house. And I'm done. Thanks.
Mr. Watson, just a point on that grate. You brought that up before about the fact that it's very heavy. The fact that you were talking about 6 feet drop, I think there's got to be some way of making sure that nobody, including 2 teenagers, can't lift it up and move it. Is there I think we probably need some way of actually clamping it down so nobody can simply lift the thing up.
Sure, if that's a concern, as a condition, we can, when we go to the grate store, we can buy one that has bolts. So it'd be bolted down, secured with stainless steel bolts. And then that's common detail for something like if you had a catch basin grate on a limited access highway, so that it can't come off by a car driving over it. But we can put that here if you would like to, not a problem.
I think that would be wise. Any other questions?
Oh, yep. We have Jeffrey Bells.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, this is Jeffrey Bells, 38 Oldfield, lot 48 on the map here with the swale on it. So the chat's been pretty active about it. The swale currently is holding water. It keeps holding water down the walkway. It seems to also hold water on the walking trail going across. It seems like this is a Band-Aid kind of fix and not a long-term thing. We are concerned that with this Band-Aid fix, if it's going to be on the HOA, once Longbuilt leaves, it's going to be on us to maintain, take care of, and fix all of this.
That's a good question. So you are right that when we put in this swale, it was a stopgap measure. But we really aren't allowed to modify all the drainage without getting the permit permanently. So once we put the swale in, or once the contractor put the swale in and brought the water around these homes, we stopped and we came up with a formal design to present to the board and the town's engineer. So right now the swale only comes back and ends up in this open space area where the water probably pools in this flat zone before it comes down. So by having the swale continue down the road, down this hill and into here, that all the standing water should go away. And then I think you might have to talk to Lee about what the actual homeowners association responsibilities are with the swale, et cetera. But the only thing that I think you would need to make sure is done back here is that, grass clippings and things aren't placed in it, or if a tree branch fell in it, that you take it out. But other than that, you shouldn't have any issues.
I mean, it's already holding water with issues without tree branch or grass clippings, and I imagine over
Yeah,
time.
because the end wasn't completed, because we brought it around and then it stopped the water from just shooting straight down the hill, and it does hold up on the side. So
Well,
once they complete that and bring it around, it'll keep flowing.
Maybe you could clarify the fact that it's proposed grass swale. What kind of maintenance will a grass swale require, and at what type of what intervals?
I'd say it'd be similar maintenance to your own lawn. If you, in the fall time, if you're doing a fall cleanup, you're mowing your lawn and you might go up there and just rake it out, make sure it's flowing.
If it's grass, then the grass is going to grow, and you're going to have to cut the grass too, are you not, or no?
Yeah, if the grass got too tall, again, it's covered. It's in the shade. So from what I've seen, the grass hasn't been growing very tall. I'm sure he'd know a little bit better than I, but I wouldn't expect the grass to be like a meadow type grass. It would just be enough grass to stabilize the ground so that it doesn't wash away.
And how deep will, again, the swale be, the actual swale?
It's about 18 inches.
And how wide?
2 feet at the bottom.
Okay. Thank you.
We did have further questions on the swale. Is there any way that, why does the swale have to run in that particular location? So if you could just place it 20 feet further, then you're not on our property. And then this problem of if something occurs, and you're saying it's the homeowner association's essential problem to fix once Longville is out of here, then we would kind of be avoiding that. So why can't it be moved 20, it's about 30 feet, 20 to 30 feet from the property line, our property lines, and into the trees?
Yep, so that would we would do that, but we would require clearing about 30 feet more trees across the back in the open space. So I think the idea was to try and avoid as much tree clearing as possible.
I mean,
And then this
of
area
trees
up on
right-
top is almost, I don't know, it's not too usable. Again, being
But
at the
it is
top of
our
that.
property. So like if we ever wanted to find a purpose for it, that's up to us to determine versus someone else telling us it's not really usable space. Like it would have been nice if we had the opportunity to clear those trees and fence it as usable space. Because it is, I mean, from the top of the hill back, roughly almost like 35, 40 feet going all the way across our property. So, I mean, I'm wondering if at some point, maybe this should be considered that it's moved off of the lots that it runs on and put into a public space.
It might be a question for Lee, but I know we say proposed drainage easement. I'm not sure if this drainage easement already exists
It does.
here. It does, okay.
Yeah.
I think that was the intent, is this drainage easement was put on the property before it was sold to make sure that it could accommodate that swale.
I mean, we were already in contract building when this came about. We weren't really given a choice. They didn't know it was going to be coming to the town to be approved, or perhaps I would have said something sooner, but we would, and I'm sure everyone else who has this running across their backyard would much prefer if it could be moved off of our properties. And I think that's something that could perhaps be addressed right now. If you're going to approve this, then maybe we look at approving it so that it doesn't run through private property.
And if the
I will
concern was
say,
clear
ahead.
trees, I mean, you plan on clearing trees just for the parking lot that we were not aware of. If you're gonna worry about clearing
Excuse me,
trees.
wait
that
a
would
minute,
be
wait a minute,
something
one
like this.
person at a time and through the chair, please.
Yes.
Yeah, no, we're together.
Okay. The, let's see. Was that ever considered, the idea of moving the swale off property? Mr.
When we
Watson?
looked at it, to have the smallest amount of swale, you want to have a swale that's on a relatively flat area. If I cut a swale across this slope and I come down 2 feet, I have to grade back. So if I'm going across a flat area, I can essentially dig down 18 inches and kind of pitch it a little bit. If I move that up the slope, I have to dig down, then fill up on one side, then slope it all the way down. Then on the back side, I have to slope all the way up to catch the slope. So something that was a 15-foot wide swale could easily grow to a 30-foot wide grading event through there. So that's why we didn't propose it for there, just to try and keep it as simple as possible to come through that terrace at the top of the slope.
So, Mr. Jimmy, can I ask Attorney Castaneda a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
So Attorney Castaneda, this drainage easement is already recorded on all these lots that are needed for this swale, correct?
That is entirely correct, yes.
So I mean, I think that if the developer reserved that right on those lots, it's a private matter. I think that we have to focus on, I don't think we should consider moving it at this point. I mean, if there wasn't an easement recorded and they were gonna go back to ask all these homeowners that question, then that would be something that we could ask them to do. But if this was recorded as a drainage easement and every buyer knew that buying the property and an attorney reviewed it as part of the title, I don't see how we can even consider asking them to move the swale.
And I
And
agree.
personally, I'd rather see it in the area that's already cleared. Thank you.
It's a drainage
Are
easement being
are there
used.
any other questions?
Yeah, we weren't done asking our questions. So,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I mean, I still think, I mean, when it was proposed to us, it was just told to us. It wasn't proposed. It wasn't said, we're putting this in here. Would you like to go somewhere else? But I really think it should be considered I think the swale should be considered to be taken off our private property. But our biggest concern really is the 11 parking spaces. When you go to the Longbuilt website and you look at the overview of this community, there's no mention of parking spaces there. Beyond that, I mean, I recently had to apply for a permit to get a shed, and then my shed has to be 30 feet off my property line. And that's for me to privately use a structure within like my own private land. I mean, I think it's pretty unfair for you to ask a bunch of people to then put 11 parking spaces abutting their private properties to invite, the public in to use when, like, for example, we can't even put a shed where we want, like you have restrictions on how far something needs to be into my property and away from others. And I think perhaps we should look at how far away a parking lot needs to be away from residential houses.
Could somebody clarify these parking spaces for everybody? On the original plan, I don't think it was ever brought up, were the parking spaces there?
So, Mr. Jemian, can I just comment real quick?
Go ahead, Mr. Driscoll.
So, on the original plan, we asked when the Latola family presented this project, it was always, we're always trying to connect open spaces in town. The open space along the Taunton River is contiguous with the preserve, which is owned by the Perkins family. Then the Latola family developed it. So we tried, I think with those projects, both landowners were good about trying to develop those open spaces. So we had big contiguous lots of open space. With the open space on the other side, if you recall, we asked the Latola family when they were the applicant at the time to help us improve the Jenny Leonard Park. It was a dilapidated 11-acre, 10-acre park at the time. We had no real access. It was a safety hazard, and the elevations just didn't allow for the public to be able to use, maintain, or monitor that park. So one of the solutions we came up with in granting the special permit, and whatever long-built homes represented to their buyers is outside of this board's purview. If they misrepresented something, that's between them and the buyer. If they did appropriately represent something, that's between them and the buyer. But there were always 11 parking spots on the plan. We always tried to connect the open space. We asked for that open space, the first right of refusal, to go to the town, so that the town could own that open space, that 11 adjacent to that 11 acres, so that people in the area can enjoy that park, and we could begin to revitalize it. If you remember, we also had a condition in there that long-built homes had to go in and remove all the structures and clean that park up to give us a clean palette to be able to revitalize that park, and they did that as well as part of this project. So from day one, those parking spaces were on there, and it's I believe the intent of the town and Parks and Rec to take that piece of open space, which is allowed by the special permit. So
I don't know if
Thank-
it's
thank
so
you,
much
Mr.
that
Driscoll.
people are upset that there's 11 parking spaces there. It's the lack of transparency. And I think what people are mostly concerned about is the lack of safety and what it invites into a community. So I do actually think that this is very important that as a town, it is discussed, because it's our children at stake.
But this was
And it's-
discussed, right, Jennifer? At previous hearings, this parking lot was approved on this plan.
Yes.
But I'm,
Legal thing. There's nothing we can do.
okay, I mean, I'm just saying it wasn't discussed with all of us within the community. It comes as a huge shock and a huge disappointment that as members of this community now, it's just going to be bypassed when we all have a legitimate concern about it.
Right. And I'm part of the Latola home, so it's still connected with that community, and that certainly wouldn't have been shown to us either. So, and I agree. There's so many children. It's scary. It's
speaking. You have to be
concerning.
recognized. You have to be recognized by the chair to speak.
Please, all questions will go through the chair. As Mr. Driscoll pointed out, and I don't have it in front of me, but the original plan did have the parking places. So it's something that was approved, and it's part of the plan right now. And the question is whether it was presented to you when you purchased the homes. But I would like to at least get this drainage taken care of. Are there any specific questions?
I'm going to finish up my speaking turn, and then I'm going to turn it over. Perhaps we need to make some sort of proposal to take it off the plan. I think it seems like it's a legitimate concern right now, and it's just really being we're trying to overshadow that. We're trying to move past it by you guys saying you've discussed it before. I think it's something that needs to come back to the table then, and that we all need to come together and discuss and find a solution to.
Possible.
So, ma'am, I don't think anybody's trying to overshadow. I think what's being said is that this was previously approved under the original special permit that was approved, and they're constructing it as approved by the planning board. If it wants to be removed, or if people want it removed, you need to go through the owner, which is Long Built Homes, and they need to present it to the planning board. Your concerns, while heard and understood, are with Long Built Homes, not the planning board. The planning board has no jurisdiction at this time to remove those, just randomly remove those spaces. Long Built Homes has to create a plan, do another modification to the special permit to remove those spaces. If all of the owners want to have a meeting with Long Built, get together with them, express their concerns, come up with a solution, that's a different story. At this time, the planning board cannot just decide to remove those spaces. They are approved. They're part of a special permit. It's been recorded at the Registry of Deeds. All of those plans are public record. They've been on file since this has been approved for 5 years or whatever it is. Anybody could have seen those plans at any time. So I'm just saying you need to deal with Long Built and get that addressed through them, not the planning board.
Okay, I mean, I understand that, and that's information that we needed to know, because I think when we got notice of this meeting, we thought we were coming to something where you guys were going to make a decision. That's at least how your notice to us was like obviously taken by most residents here. So I guess we will just get together with Longbuilt.
Okay, are there any other questions?
Yes. Ryan, I'll unmute you.
Being heard now?
Go ahead.
Yep.
This thing has gone on forever. I'm so sorry.
Back to 400 Walnut. The town of Bridgewater Conservation Commission has jurisdiction over and is supposed to protect within 100 feet of wetlands. And I'm sorry if I pronounce it wrong, but Mr. Centaro says it's more likely than not that the overflow from the swale runs into the wetlands. And then to Mr. Kalea's point, that street water runoff
Thank you. I'm so sorry.
have pollutants. So the pollutants go into the wetlands. How are you protecting the wetlands? And also, it's outrageous to think that simply removing a tree branch is maintenance of the swale. If someone dumps lawn fertilizer in it, or you have your street runoff, Mr. Kalea was talking about, or someone from the new parking spaces dumps trash, that's running directly into the wetlands that are supposed to be protected. And lastly, you claiming to avoid clearing trees is comical. That's all.
Thank you.
Conservation just isn't the purview of the planning board, though.
Okay, anybody else? Any other questions?
Yeah, we have Brian Hines.
Go ahead, Mr. Hines.
I'd like to go last. I believe the other person with their hand raised was before me.
We have a phone number ending in 6185.
Sorry, I believe I was on mute, but I'd like to let the person with the phone number go first because they've been the queue.
Yeah, I'm trying to unmute them. Thank you. Oh, sorry, I just unmuted you again. Sorry. 6185. If you press, I think it's either *9 or *6 to unmute yourself.
Anybody?
I don't see them unmuting themselves.
If
They don't
there's
seem to be
nobody there,
unmuting
we'll take
themselves.
Mr. Hines then.
Mr. Hines, would you like to go?
Mr. Hines,
There
go
they go.
ahead.
They just
Hi, this
Oh, they
is
just-
Brian
wait.
Hines. I live on 23 Oldfield Road, Lot 7, that you can see on the top right of the map. I don't have any prepared remarks. I more so wanted to see, the thoughts of the community. But going through this, it seems peculiar to me that there were prior meetings being held on these proposals, and the statement has been made that we've been that these meetings have taken place and we had a chance to voice our opinions. Yet I don't want to speak for everyone in the community, but from what I'm seeing in the thread, and I would encourage everyone on the board to read this thread to get the consensus that seems to be being formed, that we would have liked to have been at a meeting prior to this, but we've only been notified of this 7 days ago, roughly. My concern, I think there's a lot of concerns people have. One for me is that the lack of transparency is concerning, given there's decisions being made about our community without us getting, a ready chance to chime in or have opinions about this, for decisions to be made. That being said, there's been a lot of reference to this being in the plans. It's been in the plans for a while. I know Lee is the lawyer at Longbuilt. Is there any responsibility on Longbuilt's part, or Lee as their liaison, to provide that documentation showing all these edits to the Longbuilt map? Because I have never seen it before, and I don't think a lot of people have. And I have spoken to people in the community, a lot of which are likely not on this call, and the overwhelming opinion is that no one is happy with these changes. And sorry, I know I've said a lot, but I'll stop there for now.
Mr. Hines, just to clarify, are you referring specifically to the parking lot?
Well, so the proposed plans affect people differently. I can respect the comments being made about an easement going on someone's actual property. It does seem unfair that you need to get a permit for a shed, but that you can just have, like a hole dug in your backyard without really knowing it was ever going to be there.
Well, just,
I know you could potentially point to some prior plans, but, you know, I mean, I don't think most of us are reading the finest of the finest details, and this comes as a surprise. So it was fairly transparent in the letter that we were going to have a meeting this week. We were all notified, but for me personally, I think a collection of the comments I've seen so far. So there's going to be less of a vested interest in public people coming to the parking lot to keep it clean. I'm sure people would like to use it, but they wouldn't have to pay fees for it. It's not going to be anything they're going to have to deal with themselves. Secondly, there's a safety issue, which I think people can understand. There's a lot of young children in this neighborhood that would be affected by, you know, people that might be there. None of this may come to fruition. This might all just be hypothetical, but these are concerns that I think people have. And then thirdly, and this is more so from my perspective, is the lack of transparency. And I encourage you to read the thread. It seems people are kind of, many people seem to have the same opinion.
just to hopefully clarify what Ms. Burke said and Mr. Driscoll, I mean, these plans were approved quite a while ago, prior to any of the homes being built. What we're dealing with right now as a major modification is the drainage. The proposed swale was there, and we're talking about improving the drainage going across the road into the wetlands. And as far as has been informed by Mr. Driscoll, the parking lot was part of the original plan that was approved and it's on file in Plymouth right now. So nothing has really changed from the original plans.
Well, with that said, I mean,
the new drainage and the parking lot movement. That's it.
With that said, I mean, it's very easy to say nothing has changed, but I have never seen a map, not on long-built homes, not on any of the illustrations I've ever seen in this community. I have never seen a parking lot put in that section. And I don't think it would be very difficult to use CAD and draw a parking lot in that spot that people would have been aware of. I have never known about that until now. And for me, just from a gut check perspective, it seems fishy that I'm just finding out about it now. And it makes me wonder about the integrity of other things that could, you know, be going on behind the scenes. And I think that's a reasonable perspective.
So, Mr. Jimmy, can I just comment real quick?
Better than I. Go ahead, Mr. Driscoll.
So a comment was made about transparency, and I think you hit the nail on the head. These meetings were very open and transparent. Unfortunately, you know, there's no lots to sell until there's an approval. So that, you know, the potential buyers aren't aware of the proceedings that are happening before they buy there. You know, that's why it's you know, and I'm not, you know, I feel bad, but if it was misrepresented to them, that's between them and Long Built Homes. What Long Built Homes gives them for a colored map has nothing to do with the planning board. It's, you know, there's a special permit on file that an attorney should review. There are plans on file that can be done as part of the title examination. So everything that we have done is very transparent. It's very accessible to the public through the Registry of Deeds. We have no control over what they build for a home, what they give for a map, what they give. You know, we have no control of that, and that's really a private issue. I think we need to stay focused on. We have an application for us to construct this drainage, and that's what's before us. And the owners have a deed with an easement on it that they agreed to when they took ownership of the property to allow the developer to do this. So it's really a lot of this is really, I'm sorry to say, but it's a private issue. So.
Could I ask that you provide to at least to this group, or does someone have readily available the location to look at these plans that were approved, or the meeting minutes of prior meetings, so that we can see this?
Available in the Community and Economic Development Office at the Academy Building at 66 Central Square. You could send an email requesting them at ced@bridgewaterma.org.
But just, I think people should just keep in mind that the parking spaces were always there. The mailbox
It
was
just
always there.
it seems like a very funny oversight to draw up a nice detailed map of the community and not have a parking lot on it.
And, you know, and I'm not saying you're wrong, Mr. Hines, but what I'm saying is we have no control over the literature that long-built homes gives you.
Okay,
You
well,
know
it
what I
sounds
mean?
like this is something potentially we'll have to take up with Long Built and speak to Lee, who seems to have dropped from this call. But I guess that's all for my comments. I think a lot of them are kind of similar to the theme I think I've been seeing from others on this thread.
What you'll see in the map is the outer perimeter remain the same in that space. However, inside that perimeter, now
Mr.
because
Driscoll,
they're adding
Pat,
this drainage, they're
Pat,
carving off the.
Pat, you're breaking up. You want to repeat yourself?
So I think can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
So I think what the public will see when they pull those plans is that they will see the outer perimeter of that open space is the same. However, we asked that the mailbox and the parking be separated because they were all on one parcel before. We asked that they be separated so that the homeowners association, so to speak, wouldn't have to maintain these 11 parking spaces, and they wouldn't be responsible for liability, et cetera, and that the open space would be contiguous with these parking spaces. So the number of parking spaces, the mailbox, the outer perimeter is all the same, but they're just changing the layout a little bit.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public?
Yep. Brian would like to speak again.
Has
Yeah,
has everybody spoken one time, Ms. Burke?
I don't believe there's anybody else with their hands
Yeah,
raised.
am I going to get it?
Okay, go
I
ahead.
just have a quick thought. Seems to me with everybody that lives right there and is going to be affected by it has an issue with Longville. And do you think it would be fair to give them some time to try to resolve this before we went ahead and put that swale in?
Well, the issue before us is the swale.
Right.
We're dealing with a major improvement to the major modification to this plan. And the issue before us is the swale, in which the town engineer has, if he's still on, has essentially given his approval to.
So why did you invite anybody here if you're just going to go ahead and steamroll it over the top of us? Why are we even here? Why do you care what we have to say?
We do. Our decision is based on a number of factors. One, the plans themselves, the input. Obviously, if we're talking about an engineering drainage, the town engineer is obviously the one person we have to hear and listen to. The public also has a say in this, and we listen to it. That doesn't mean that every time the public or anybody gives a comment, whether it be a board member or not, is the way we're going to go. We have to discuss it, and then we vote on it as a board. And if the majority votes to approve, then it's approved. But the issue,
well, you can tell there are some pretty strong feelings in the community, and I think that needs to be considered when you make a vote.
I understand, sir, but again, the issue before us is to improve the drainage, which is not working right now. And if we have a plan before us that does do just that, then we have to at least look at it as a means of improving the drainage, which has to be done.
Well, it's the least expensive way to improve the drainage. I believe the guy with the map over there already said the correct way to do it was to change the pipes that are alongside the houses. That would cost them a lot more money. It would eliminate the swale pretty much and take care of the problem, but that's going to cost more money. But I think that would be better for everyone.
Okay, we have Carlton Hunt would like to speak.
Hi, Carlton Hunt, 80 Austin Street. I've followed this development for a long time, and I just want to remind people that the original site plans were developed under a previous owner of the development area. And I suggest that we find those site plans to see, because I have viewed them hard copy that had the parking lot on them. I've also checking here that the 2016 version does not have the parking spaces. So I think we need to go back one owner before and see what was really planned, because I was told and informed that the owner, the now current owner of the development, actually was required by law to in fact follow the site plan as developed with the previous owner. Thank you.
So, Mr. Jimmy, just to
Yep, go ahead.
respond to Mr. Hunt, Dr. Hunt, I don't think that there's only one recorded set of site plan, subdivision plans for this project.
Yes,
I don't,
Jennifer, may I for a minute? I have the book and page recording that shows those parking lots on the Registry of Deeds from 2015. And it,
Jasmine, can you see my screen? I have it up on the screen.
yes.
Please,
Okay.
one at a time.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Driscoll, why don't you finish your comment?
so I think that the other plans being referenced, Dr. Hunt, are plans that have been prepared for marketing purposes by Long-Built Homes. The official plans are recorded and do contain the parking lot, and we've always asked for that. You know, I think in town, we've always been trying to connect open spaces, and this is a way to connect open spaces. I think if Long-Built Homes wanted to move that parking lot and come back to us for another modification, they'd have to figure out a way to put them off of Walnut Street and put them somewhere else. But the elevation is difficult over there, so. And you gotta keep in mind, I think we're trying to have ADA access, and the slope is much better coming in from the rear of the Jenny Lennon Park than the Walnut Street. Is that Cherry Street or Walnut Street? I'm sorry, on the other side.
Cherry Street.
Cherry.
Okay. Any other comments from the public?
Yes, two people who want to speak again. Jay Needle wants to speak again.
Okay. Mr. Needle?
Yes, I just don't understand how you say this is not a parking lot issue when the design of the swale and the drainage directly affects how the parking lot is configured, how it abuts against the properties directly adjacent, and how, you know, it changes the entire layout of the area, removal of a large number of trees. And, you know, I think one directly affects the other. And if you're not going with the original plan, then it is a parking lot issue.
Okay.
And then
Any response on that? Do you not agree?
Well, the parking lot, the issue of the parking lot, it seems to be that it's been moved. The parking lot was there originally. We're talking about moving the parking lot because of the swale.
Yeah, exactly. So how is this not a parking lot issue?
Mr. Chairman, if I may respond or maybe provide some insight, the parking spaces, or the gravel parking spaces were moved not because of this swale. The swale was put in because of a drainage problem that we had, and not solving that problem would have caused a lot of problems to the people that live there on the road. So the swale helps everybody out. And then the parking spaces, again, as I think one of the board members was mentioning, was requested that those parking spaces, that gravel spot, was moved away from the parking, I'm sorry, the mailbox. Again, I would be shocked if I saw people parked in those gravel spaces ever, to be honest with you.
Well, then why haven't?
Well, it is part of a good plan to connect open space. I would say that maybe on occasion, if somebody wanted to in the neighborhood, again, I anticipate that people would show up either on like a golf cart or on their car or something and show up and park there to go on a walk in the fall or something like that. Again, it's open. There's not going to be a sign. There's not going to be an advertisement of, you know, this way to the gravel spaces. And again, it's the 11 parking spaces that were originally provided for when asked by the planning board. I was not part of the original approval process, but that's my understanding is that they were asked to provide that. So in order for us to maintain our special permit and make sure that we meet the standards that were put in there, we show the gravel spaces. So since the town asked to have the gravel spaces separate from the homeowner association mailbox, simply move them over, and that's what you see on the plan. But they don't, if the swale wasn't there, that we would still move that over.
Okay. Anybody else, Ms. Burke?
Yes, Jeffrey Bells would like to speak again.
Go ahead.
I guess we're still wondering about the swale on the back of the property. Something we noticed was that a large amount of trees and brush was taken out to provide additional walking trails. So would it be that, like, I mean, if your concern is taking down trees, that perhaps part of the job is already done to move the swale off of our private properties? And I would just hope that the board, as you're making this decision about the swale, it's not that the swale can't be done, but perhaps it can be done in just a little bit further back.
Okay. Is there any other question, Ms. Burke? Comment?
Nobody with their hand raised at this time, and I think I'm just looking through the chat. I think everybody in the chat has spoken. Let me just double check.
I guess I'm wondering is there going to be like a response to my question? Like, can this be a serious consideration that the swale be moved back and that perhaps some of the work of taking down the trees has already been done? I feel like I'm just being glossed over.
Well, Mr. Jimmy, can I respond to that? I mean,
Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead, Mr.
The developer secured a legal right on those private properties to put this in. He has a legal right. We can't tell him that he can't use an easement that they negotiated with the homeowner. If that was a proposed easement and they had to go back to all these people now and ask for that right, then I think we'd be in a different spot. But I think that this was obviously, you know, they had the foresight to see that this could be an issue. They reserved the right to put the drainage on those lots. Many lots have easements. I have an easement on my lot. I don't particularly like it, but it's there, and somebody else has the right to access it. So that was a negotiated right as part of the sale. I don't know how we can tell somebody they can't use their drainage easement to put drainage on.
Oh, I mean, and I understand what you're saying there, but now that you're looking at, I guess what I'm trying to understand is this a proposal that you're going to take a vote on and say, yes, this is where we want it, or no, we don't want it here? Because then what I'm asking is, if you're considering where to put it as a town, and you know, you're a member of this town along with me, would you all take a look at considering moving it 20 feet back off of people's property? It doesn't seem like a very big amount of space to move it back. Or am I just like misreading what this meeting is? Like you're not taking a vote, like it's already done, it's done.
Mr. Watson, I don't, behind those houses, the elevation changes drastically, correct?
That's right. Yeah. So basically it comes down at a steep slope, it levels off and then drops down again. So the best place for the swale is at the top of that slope where it's flat. And again, we're not, part of this proposal is not asking the town to maintain that. It's all part of the homeowners association. So
I know, but that's putting a very big burden on a community when you could just move it 20 feet back and then it's no longer our burden.
I don't think the town wants to take over that at all.
Yeah, but I didn't get a choice in it. I wasn't asked if I wanted this or if I approved it. I was simply told, hey, just so you're aware, we're putting this in.
Oh,
yeah, you want to have
the drainage easement?
I completely agree. Like, we do want that drainage easement. I mean, I see how much pool is just in my backyard. I completely agree that something needs to be done. I mean, could there perhaps be underground piping? Would that be more effective? I don't know. All I'm asking is, can this be moved just a little bit further, and can we take that into consideration?
Is Mr. Antonero still on the call?
No, I don't
He
believe
is
he is.
not, he dropped off.
Well, that's unfortunate. First of all, is there any more public input?
So there's some
Okay.
couple of people in the chat that didn't raise their hand, so
Something that has not
Kristen,
been discussed in particular, I'd like to hear.
well, Kristen Samaras, did you want to speak?
Anybody?
No, okay.
No.
There's an AQ812. I don't know if you would like to speak.
Please.
Somebody named Dad, would you like to speak?
You see Mr. Hines raising his hand again?
I know, I'm just going through the people
Oh,
that
yeah, I
haven't
got you.
spoken. Jessica Mahoney. I don't even see you on.
Hello.
Oh, hi.
Hi, this is Michael Murray. I'm Jessica's fiance.
Go ahead.
I'm wondering, so our association is going to be the one plowing these 11 parking lot spaces. Who's responsible for them?
That's why, so Mr. Jimmy, can I answer the question?
Go ahead, you know better than I do. Go ahead.
So, Sarah, what we did was, when this project was approved, the open space, the town has some decision making in the open space. So it can either go to a nonprofit, a homeowners association, or the town of Bridgewater. I believe it's the intent of the town to take this piece of open space anyway. And the reason we asked for the 11 parking spaces to be moved off the mailbox piece was so that the homeowners association didn't have to maintain and have to be responsible for these 11 spots. And there was a clear delineation between what the homeowners were responsible for and what the town was responsible for. So the only thing that the homeowners association will be responsible for will be that mailbox area and the swale and drainage area if we condition it that way.
So I'm wondering, and when someone slips and falls in this parking lot, who are they suing? Are they suing us? Are they suing the town of Bridgewater?
Well, it depends on how final ownership rests. If it's the town of Bridgewater that owns it, I imagine the town will get sued. If the homeowners association owns it, then it would be the homeowners association. If Wildlands Trust takes it, it would be Wildlands Trust. But right now, ownership has not been finalized on that piece.
So the parking spots have been finalized, but that hasn't been finalized. And also, it says on this form, this is the first form we've got about this. How come we didn't receive others? I know a lot of other people say this, but I feel like the wool has been pulled over our eyes. Everybody's been real politically correct with you guys. On this form, it says modifications, plural, and with the parking spots, it says to the addition of 11 gravel parking spaces. When it's an addition, you're adding it. So you're telling me that it's finalized.
Well, the original plan had the 11 spots on it on the open space.
So
could you point out where the original plans show that? Because I opened the link that was sent to us and I don't see it anywhere on it. And I know we're being told that it exists, but I'm not seeing it in practicality. And
Areas
it
on
seems
parcel
obvious
A
that
that
the
are up
legal
right now.
recourse for this has dropped off early, right when the public discourse has opened up for questions that would directly pertain to long-built homes representation.
Mr. Hines, you weren't recognized to speak, so I need you to
I
ask you
apologize.
to mute yourself.
Who is speaking?
Whoever's under Jessica Mahoney was
Okay.
recognized to speak.
yeah, it says modifications. So the addition of the 11 gravel parking spaces, if it looks to me, it says that's a modification. It's an addition. So why does it say that here on this public hearing notice?
I believe that was an error, is that it says the addition, because they were on the previously approved subdivision and special permit plans.
The
Whoever
first one,
drafted that note.
I understand that on the first plans, but how many plans have we gone through? Like, obviously, it sounds like it's been taken out, and now you guys are trying to throw it back in there.
No.
So I've been on the board. Can I say something, Mr. Jimmy?
Go ahead, Mr. Driscoll.
I think most of us have been on the board since this was approved. The final approval has not changed other than a few lot lines that pertain to individual lots. I believe we did a couple of A&Rs in the property, which are approvals not required. Nothing. I don't think there's been any other major modifications to this project. What was recorded in 2015 or approved in 2015 was all done in a public process, was all negotiated in public. However, like, it's tough to notify people that don't live there yet. And I think that's your frustration is maybe Long-Built Homes gave you something that wasn't what was approved. I have no idea. And if that's the case, that's between you and Long-Built Homes.
You're muted.
Well, people have been living here over a year. So why haven't they been notified about this?
This was
Because
approved in 2015.
This is the first change.
Oh, so it's a change. Now you're telling me it's a change. And
well,
we're talking about the parking spots. We're not talking about the swale. So you're telling me the addition is a change now.
Sir, I think you should look at the original plans and you'll see that they have moved, but the 11 parking spaces were always on that piece of open space.
I have the original plans here on my screen. I don't know if you can see the screen, but what I'm showing on the screen is the original plan. And it shows the 11 parking spaces here.
It sounds like you guys have made up your mind. This public hearing is basically a facade, and we're just here so you can check the box because you're not changing your mind. This is what's happening, correct?
Well, what's before us is to improve the drainage. It's nothing. They're not adding 11 spaces. They're moving them away from the mailbox. They're still on that same open space.
Yeah, it says addition here. It's adding. So,
it was an error. It was a typing error.
No addition. I'd
like to try to move this process along.
Yeah, so you're gonna pass the buck to Longbill, and they're gonna pass it back to you. So this is what's happened.
Wait, please. I think that there are a number of things going on here. One, there is the issue of the drainage, which has to be approved. And there are certain parts of the drainage. Mr. Intanero, I believe, is no longer on the call. And I think he's essential for final approval. Secondly, a number of you are worried about the parking, and you are suspicious about whether this parking has been added or whether it was on the original plan. I think it's up to the board, but I think perhaps the best thing would be to continue this hearing. If the residents want to look at the original plan, they may obviously go look at it in the Community and Economic Development Office, or we can post it on the next meeting. But I think, and Mr. Intanero could also be at the next meeting. I think, from my personal opinion, that we should probably postpone this, continue this hearing to a date in the future where Mr. Intanero is back on the call. The residents can look at the original plan and formulate their questions if they have more questions, and then we could try to come to some sort of conclusion here.
Yes.
So the only thing I'd ask, Mr. Jimmy, Mr. Watson, you're still on the call, right?
That's correct.
So, and like I said, I've been in the car, I've been in the gym and everything else on this call. So, I believe the parking spaces now, I believe if a car pulled into the parking spaces before, and if it were nighttime or whatever, lights, and I don't anticipate people will be pulling in there at night, but lights would have shown into the Jenny Leonard Park, correct? Originally.
No, the Jenny Leonard Park is relatively far away, so it would have been
well
lined up.
in that direction though. So my question is now if somebody pulls in, now if somebody pulls into those parking spaces, is there the opportunity for the lights to go into a house or to be close to the side of a house? And if there is, maybe you could propose some, green giants or another evergreen type hedge between the parking spaces and the private lot line.
We can consider that. We'll take a look. Lee's on the call. He said that wouldn't be an issue.
I just think, if that could be nicely landscaped between the private residence and the parking lot, that would maybe, help the situation. But personally, I think, we spent a lot of time trying to make that open space an asset to the community, and having the ability to park there and access that playground, was always what we tried to achieve. So
That's fine. There's enough room to pull it back away and maybe angle it a little different and add some landscaping without an issue. So we can send a revised plan in for that.
Okay. As I said earlier, my suggestion to the board is that we continue this hearing to a date in the future where the residents can have a better look at the original plan. Mr. Netanyahu can be back on the call and we can try to solve these two issues. I just want to make it clear, though, that this board is not trying to pull the wool over anybody's eyes, that we're trying to deal with one specific issue here that that was not overlooked, but that came about from the original plan in terms of this drainage. And hopefully the residents will be understanding what we're doing. But I think there is some confusion and also some fear that we are trying to do something that we shouldn't be doing. So I think the best thing, in my opinion, is that we continue this hearing, that the residents can get a better look at the original plan, and then we can go further and we can try to decide at the next meeting. And that's up to the board, though.
No, I agree, Ray.
Yeah, I just have a couple of questions
Go
for
ahead,
Mr. Watson. So it's my understanding that if this modification does not pass, this would revert to the previously accepted plan. Is that accurate, Mrs. Burke?
That's correct.
And in that case, the 11 parking spaces would remain, but the drainage improvements would never be built.
That's correct.
Mr. Watson, in your opinion, if these drainage improvements are not conducted, what would the end result be to these properties as far as water infiltration and drainage occur?
It would be water impacting lots 48 to 51. And then in a large storm event, there would be stormwater entering the road and would impact any of the lots between that and to the low spot of across from lot 46.
So essentially everything on this plan in front of us right now would be affected. Potential washouts, that kind of thing, flooding.
Yes. Yeah, it would be in everyone's best interest to have this drainage improvement installed.
Okay. That's all I had. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask Mr. Watson one quick question?
Go ahead.
So Mr. Watson, why are you amending the plans to add that landscape and whatnot to buffer the private residents? Mr. Antonero said that the basin that's shown on the open space that may be taken over by the town, he would not want to accept that. Could you rework that lot line, or from around that's currently around the mailbox and the mailbox to include that drainage basin, so to speak? So that's part of the mailbox. That's part of the mailbox parcel.
Yeah, we'll have to check as long as the open space number that the total area works out. So I'll work with Lee on that. We'll review the special permit and see if we can do it by including it in the parcel, or if we need to put it into an easement.
Either that or an easement that the homeowners association is responsible for.
Right. It might cause some trouble if we take the area out of the open space. Drainage is allowed in the open space. You can see the other drainage basins are in there. But if we take it out, we might be violating the condition of the total amount of open space. So we'll take a look at that. And when we revise the plan, it'll have a method that we can discuss for sure.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
One other question.
Go ahead, Ms. Scudero.
You said that that pipe is going to go down to the wetlands. I think I saw somebody comment, what if one of the neighbors uses fertilizer? Is it possible that that could get into that drainage and going down
So-
into wetlands?
So some of the BMPs, what would we call a best management practice, if we were taking off grass that had fertilizer and things on it, what I would propose is a grass swale and an infiltration basin, which removes at least 80% of the nutrients in TSS, and that's what we're proposing. So I don't anticipate there to be any additional pollutants being added, but the BMPs that we're proposing would take them out should they be there.
Great. Thank you. All right, what's the board wish?
Mr. Chairman, you still have 4 people with their hands raised. Do you
Oh, I'm
want
sorry.
to
I thought we were
recognize them now, or do you want to
No,
wait
I
until the next
will
hearing?
recognize them.
Okay, Mr. Hines, you had your hand raised. Did you still want to ask a question?
I think I'd like to let Tom go first. He had his hand up before me.
Okay. Mr. Samaras, I'm sorry if I butchered your name.
How you doing? Tom Samaras, Lot 6. Just a quick question. You guys keep talking about these plans have been approved. These plans have already been approved. When was the date these plans were approved?
I have a copy of the plan in front of me. I see that the date on the plan is April 24th, 2018.
So 2018. I believe, one of the first lots to reserve and believe one of the first families, my wife and kids, to move in. Just like everybody else, this is new to me. I never saw anything that had to do with parking spaces. Obviously, everything kind of goes through you guys, so it's safe to assume that you guys approved the plans for parking spaces, correct?
Correct.
So you guys knew families would be moving in, 18, so Bridgewater Preserve would be already probably into phase 3. So you understood the idea of having more traffic into a family area? That was a question, I'm going to assume?
Were these plans before 2018? The original decision?
You know what, it really doesn't matter what the date was. Obviously, it predates all of us. I would love to talk with you guys. I know obviously you guys came on here to talk about the drainage, but you didn't get almost 40 people to talk about water. Obviously, people are worried about parking, traffic. I think the gentleman that spoke earlier and one of the other lots mentioned that when he drives home, he sees, 20, 30 kids around. All I ask is, another question is, anybody on the board, have you guys been through this neighborhood recently?
Yes.
I actually went through yesterday to look at the modification.
So you guys understand that, adding 11 parking spaces doesn't necessarily, it invites more people, realistically. And I know Mr. Watson has mentioned the idea was for golf carts and our own cars, but realistically, it's not a huge neighborhood, 54 homes. We're not gonna drive somewhere to walk somewhere, especially if it's in our own neighborhood. So it really doesn't make any sense. The parking spaces, to me, is ridiculous that it was even approved in the first place. Now, you did it, so it's over with. We weren't, part of that meeting. None of us lived 300 feet from the area. So I'm just trying to understand what's, we have to go to obviously Longbill, which is probably a whole other deal. But, you got to understand our frustration, and you're trying to pass the ball saying it was already approved when you already approved it. So you're the ones that started this. We didn't see the plans. That's a whole other thing. But this was approved in general. This was approved because you guys thought it was a good idea. So if there's an accident, is it still a good idea? I'm not saying.
Sir, I think
it's the possibility.
As a board member, I think it's a great idea because I think that once Urbex Circle's opened up, that's a throughway. Yeah. That's no longer a dead end street. And the fact remains that Jenny Leonard Park is a public park, and there's no access. So should we have people park on the side of Cherry Street? This provides a safe access for people to pull off a street to safely access a park. And there's only parking for 11 vehicles. It's not 20 or 30 or 50. I think it's a very smart planning board decision that we looked at a development that is basically considered a connector road for safety purposes, that has no on-street parking, that a public park is between the two neighborhoods, and we're using the safest way with the best elevation to access that park and get cars off the street. I do understand the concerns about lights and the parking, abutting up against another private residence. And I think that's why the board is asking the developer to, try to mitigate any potential downside to the parking area there. But I think it's a very safe way to handle that town-owned park and to get cars off, two streets that are both throughways.
Agree with Pat. I stand by our decision. I think it's a public good, and we were right to include the parking lot.
Okay, I mean, I can't go against what you guys think. But as a resident with kids, young kids, I disagree. And I think everybody on this call will say the same thing. But you're on the board, so what do I know? Thanks.
Anybody else?
Yep, Jay Needle.
To kind of go on the same theme as the last caller, I mean, why would you approve this in a development that has no street lighting, and apparently there's no hours to this access to this park or this parking lot? What if someone just parks there all night? Who's going to police that? And, once again, we're in a neighborhood with a ton of children. And what if someone's just driving a little too fast at night? Doesn't see them because there's no street lights. Does that make a lot of sense? From
People driving in your own community.
What?
That argument can be made against people driving in your own community or any community. It seems like people think 11 gravel parking spaces to a public park is going to cause metropolitan traffic to go through this area.
Well, let's put a parking spot next to your house. Let's see how you feel about that.
I'd probably cope with that.
Well, that'd be great. Where you live?
Anybody else?
Right
Can I
down the
say
street.
something?
Sure, go ahead.
Right.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I'm one of the newest members on this board, and I can say that I have had the pleasure to be in several meetings, and I've seen how sincere and caring and integrity filled each of these board members are, and every decision that they make, although they may disagree with each other, or they attempt to first listen to the concerns of every resident that brings up an issue, and they go out their way to try to make sure that they they're thinking of everyone, not just the town, but also the residents. So I can be certain that when they decided to make these parking spots, accessible to other residents, to a public space that's owned by the town, they were also thinking of the residents. And I personally, if I had a public space around my home, I would want there to be a specified parking spot that could possibly be monitored by, say, the police at some later time, rather than someone having no access to a parking spot and just parking in front of my house, or, that's much more increases the risk, right, of anything. That I would be certain that the parking, or that the cars or the visitors would not be expected to go further, than that parking spot. So I would just say that I'm supporting the decision that the board has made in the past, and that I would want every resident that's on this meeting to understand that specified parking spots is in the better good of all of us, and you specifically, so, and your children. Thank you.
Anybody else? Any other comments?
Ariel would like to comment.
Please.
Hi, yes. So I'm just, I guess one thing that you would kind of touched on briefly before, but mentioning that you're putting a playground there. And then you also said that you weren't going to be driving traffic and encouraging traffic to come, but why would you build a playground if you're not going to tell other Bridgewater residents about it? And also I get your point. And personally, I think 11 spots is a lot because there are small businesses who are not allotted 11 spots. So I think it's a lot for a neighborhood. And just because it's only 11 spots doesn't mean that people who are made aware that those spots exist aren't going to come into the neighborhood to see if they can park there. And that doesn't mean that they're not going to try to double up and back up into the street there. And, and again, like I get your point that maybe, you can make the argument that, a resident of this community could potentially clip a child, God forbid, that would be horrible. But now we're going to bring even more traffic in where that could happen. And these children don't necessarily, I mean, you do the best you can, but they can dodge into traffic and you do the best, part of the reason we moved here was to have this safe inlet area. And now there's going to be obviously a playground and there's these trails and things like that that obviously if you invest that money into it, you're going to tell Bridgewater residents it's there. So you're going to be bringing people into this community. So, and again, and to someone else's point, these decisions were clearly made years before we were even here because our houses weren't here. But I mean, can you even address, I mean, it seems like you keep glazing over the child issue and that's, you may say that, you're all, very kind people, but that's concerning to me that you're not taking seriously how many little children are in this neighborhood. And, I mean, is there anything that's going to be enforced? I mean, how are we going to control speed and even tell people that children are in this neighborhood? I mean, it seems crazy to me that we're putting all these, like a public spot into this neighborhood. And we're not even considering alternate parking area. And I get this, that this park exists, but there's been nothing there for years. I mean, we walked through it today and I get that it's been cleared, but I mean, how long has it been abandoned for and why now is it the great idea to drive traffic there?
So Mr. Jemmy, can I respond to that?
Go ahead, Ben.
So the Jenny Leonard Park is a 10.3 acre park that has always been there. It has always been open to the public. It has always been, used by the public and was generously donated by a family in town to be used for public park purposes. The elevation on that side of the street, if we tried to have people park on the street, if we tried to have kids access it from the street with those stairs going up, would create much more of a safety hazard to little kids and to families. I think there's one spot that you can pull off of the street. I go back to, this is a well thought out plan that this is an open space community. This is part of the open space communities in the state and in our town to promote open spaces, to promote passive recreation, and all those different things. And that's what we achieved on this neighborhood. So I think a lot of the issues that are coming up tonight are non-planning board issues. I think the comments made about parking spaces being right up against the lot line were good comments. I think concerns about, the drainage were good comments, but I think a lot of these comments that have come up tonight have to do with the developer and what marketing materials they may have used and the owners. All these plans with these parking lots.
Mr. Driscoll, finish, please.
All these plans are recorded in the registry of deeds. Everybody that bought a house probably used an attorney or real estate agent. It's their job to do their due diligence to see what is around them, what zoning is, what there are for easements and everything else. The planning board, as you've seen before, we had another private issue with a neighborhood and open space. We can't fix private issues. It's outside of our purview.
Okay, but again, this is something that you had all approved, and no one again has touched on the child issue.
Right,
You know,
and we approved it. You had access to this information before you purchased your home.
sir, with all due respect, I purchased a home in the Latola home off of on Quail Run as well, so I certainly did not have access to that. And let's be clear. I mean, there are obviously very intelligent people on this call. No one would think, okay, here are the plans that I was given by Long Built for 2019, 2020, 2021, whatever they purchased, and said, okay, let me just wander back and see if anything else would have been created to make sure there's no random parking spaces that happened to be approved in 2015. I mean, and I get that they were approved in 2015, but let's be practical and realistic about what someone would have really gone and looked for and expected to see there. I'm concerned, and I'm just concerned that again, no one has touched on the children, and that is why. I mean, that's a huge problem. That scares me, and you should respect that we're parents who intentionally purchased in this neighborhood so that our children would be safe. I did not buy on Cherry Street where the entrance to this park is, because that's not safe. Cherry Street is fast and dangerous, and my child will not be walking on it. That's why we bought where we did. So I wish there could be a little bit more thought into finding a way to put parking there where it's already a busy road anyway, and children aren't walking and trying to ride their bikes.
Are there any new comments that have not been spoken of already?
Mr. Jimmy, I'll make one more comment, then I'll stop. So, most likely, and I don't know if people know this or not, most likely that street will be accepted as a public way, which if the town owns that land, which most likely they are because they already own most of it, people can just park, 11 cars can park on the street once it's a public way. I think it's much safer to provide for a gravel parking area so those vehicles can get off the public way that'll be a through way. There's nothing to say that people can't park on the public way once it's approved. If the homeowners association owns it, they could say no on-street parking. But I think most people in that neighborhood assume that that's going to be a public way, and that's how it was represented. And people can still park on the street. You could have 20 cars park on the street and still access Jenny London Park.
Okay.
There's no new hands raised.
No new comments? Okay, what is the favor of the board? My recommendation would be to let this settle. There are a number of issues here, that we continue this hearing to its date in the future, and that we again bring up the two main issues, drainage and the parking lot, and that Mr. Ingenero will be on the call at that time, and we could try to come to some sort of conclusion one way or the other.
I agree.
And I agree.
Do I hear a motion?
So, Mr. Jamie, I'll make a motion to continue this hearing to the next meeting. Is that fine?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, Mr. Geller.
I'd like to make a motion to continue this hearing to the next meeting. Is that enough time for everybody?
Okay, that Ms. Burke, that's what, May
5th.
10th, is it?
5th.
5th, May 5th. What time? Mr. Geller?
I'd have to defer to Ms. Dorr or.
We have 7 o'clock, 6:30. I don't know what we have on the docket.
I believe we have, I don't know what we have, to be honest with you.
Right now, it's just the Perkins, 31 Perkins special
Presentation.
permit and their presentation, yeah.
You want to make it?
So we have one
what time?
hearing and one presentation.
What time is Perkins?
6:30, but it may potentially be continued.
Well, that's going to probably take a while too, is it not?
Yeah, I was going to say that will take a while.
What is the special permit, Ms. Farinacci?
Wait, I can discuss that with you tomorrow if you like, but it's 31 Perkins.
It's not for the Perkins property. It's for the storage facility at 31 Perkins Street.
All right. Well, why don't, is 7 o'clock then okay, Ms. Burke, you think?
Yeah, that would be fine.
Okay, Mr. Geller?
7 o'clock.
Okay.
On the
Motion's been made to continue this hearing to 7 o'clock on May 5th. Is there a second to the motion?
I will second it. Jean?
Okay. Mrs. Guarino, second to the motion. Any discussion on the motion?
Yeah, Mr. Jimmy, I'm just seeking clarification. What do we expect will be elucidated on at the next meeting? That what extra information are we waiting for on this proposal?
Well, in my estimation, the one thing we need is Mr. Antonero back on the call to make sure that he does agree with the way the drainage plan is proposed.
Is this the best way?
Okay, that sounds good to me.
I think I also want to see the revised plans too that we talked about with, maybe some screening and the drainage easement that's going to go to that manhole cover. And just one other quick comment. I didn't sit on this board when this was first approved, but I do hear the concerns of children and everything else. But remember, when this stuff is approved, the board doesn't know who's going to purchase these houses and who's going to live there. So, I just can't. I don't like hearing that we don't care about children, because I personally do care about children. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Any other discussion on the motion?
Nope.
Okay, I'll take a roll call vote. Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Ms. Guarino?
Yes.
Mr. Geller?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Did I get everybody? Okay, so this is,
I just want to mention to the abutters that there will be no new notices sent out. This is your notice that the hearing will be May 5th at 7 p.m. The agenda will be posted the Friday before with the Zoom link.
okay. Thank you.
Thank
All
you very
right,
much,
I
Mr.
believe
Chairman.
This is the last thing on the agenda for tonight, Ms. Burke.
Yes. Yes.
I will hear a motion to adjourn then.
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. McDonald. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Mrs. Guarino seconded. The motion made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to adjourn? I'll take a roll call vote. Mr. Geller,
Yes.
Mrs. Guarino,
Yes.
Mr. McDonald,
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll. He's gone.
No, I'm a yes, and I promise to never say that our meeting will only be a few minutes again.
Yeah, right.
So.
All right. And I'm a yes also. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Ray.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thanks.
Good night, all.